Peace, Super Heru family. How y'all doing? You're now tuned in live to another episode of Super Heru Radio. I am your host, Aseer the Duke of Tears, along with my co-host, M10,000 EN, and Amor Blackhawk, and all of you beautiful people. This is December 17th, which is Knowledge God or Being Born and Build and Destroy. We got 5 days, power refinement days, until the end of Western civilization, formally. Now, don't get all, waiting to wake up and see everybody gone. We're talking about the exact spiritual end of a 25,000-year cycle that is going to result in the unification of the galactic center, the galactic plane into the galactic center, which is bringing us to the higher echelons of our consciousness to the point where we cannot deny what we know to be true. And those of us that do will be held accountable and will burn in our own iniquity. There's a lot to get into. Sorry, I'm finishing dinner. A lot to get into, so I don't want to waste too much time. First of all, we want to say bless the dead, to those who were killed, and to those who were alluded to be killed. You know what I'm saying? We want to definitely give respect out. Anybody knows my work in particular, you know that we're one of the only people in the so-called consciousness that's really taken or have been taking the satanic ritual abuse thing serious from the beginning. And when people want to say that there's no such thing and things like that, those are usually the people that's out there abusing these children and putting them in a trick bag. Or people who are just blatantly aware they ostriches, they just putting their head to the sand. So again, you got to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and let the dead bury the dead. Yet at the same time, if you see somebody about to walk off the cliff, it's your obligation as a civilized man or woman to let them know that there is a cliff there, because they may not see it. Yeah, they may not see it. It is our designation or responsibility, or both, in this world, based upon our ancestors or whatever, to help uplift fallen humanity. Not right now, but I will. Fallen humanity has been falling since the creation of humanity over 6,000 years ago. Now, as you notice, I said the creation of humanity, not the creation of man, or original man for that matter, who has always existed from the triple stage darkness all the way to now. I'm talking about the beginning of people that today we are referring to as humans. When Elijah Muhammad asked who is the colored man, he was asking you who is the hue man, meaning who is the hued man, who is the man who is colored in, who is the quote-unquote Tamahu, who is the devil, right? So here we are, like I said, 5 days away from the galactic center, to the point for those people that maybe not understand what that means, is that we are not traveling into the ecliptic of the sun. We are traveling into the elliptic of the galactic plane, meaning the level playing field of what one plane refers to or conjoins into another. We are going from one sphere of influence into a higher octave of influence, in which this octave of influence was manifested and predicted by our ancient forefathers, the people today that they announce calling, come on, Khan, all men, this and that, or whatever. But case in point, we are the specific heirs of a dynasty that has all of these ritual killings and stuff that you're seeing going down. We're going to get into, again, a lot of numerology and stuff. I purposely didn't look at a lot of different stuff out there because, again, I want to be as clear as possible in what's going on. Now, a lot of people are going to get into, first let me tie this up. Essentially, we have the galactic plane crossing As the galactic plane is crossing, we also have what they call the Grand Cross, which is north, south, east, and west in terms of the actual elliptic the Earth is traveling into, a greater position in which it will be directly in front or will receive the direct energy of the portal that is opened up on this day, December 21st, 2012. So we have the galactic center, or the black hole in the center of our universe that we are now going to be in front of. The black hole, then in front of the black hole, you've got the sun. Then in front of the sun, you got the moon. Then in front of the moon, you got the earth. This is the grand unification. This is all of the ducks being lined up in a row, right? That's one thing happening. Then we already had the two major eclipses that was already predicted when you read the Dresden Codex, right, or the Dresden file. We already went through those two eclipses. We also went through the transit of Venus already, which is supposedly one of the last great signs, the last great transit of Venus for this age. We won't have another one for another almost 1,000 years. Also, this year is a leap year, you know what I'm saying, on top of all of that. So, with this, as we transverse into the fourth age, into the fifth age, we have to basically remember one of the old adages that we've always said in the beginning of doing Super Heru Radio, that the gods of the old age become the devils in the new one. So if the devils in the old age, the age that we just coming out of, right, were manifested in these so-called lily white people, as we would like to just refine them or reduce them to that, then that means that in the new age that the God, the true God, would return, right? Therefore, anybody that is acting as Christ or seen as Christ now, like when that guy Jamie Foxx told y'all that y'all Lord and Savior was the so-called president, right? Anybody that's basically coming in the false name of Christ then is the Antichrist, meaning against or anathema Christ, right? Anybody listening to Super Heru Radio, you know that we've been talking about the secret aspect or hidden history of the Nazis and stuff like that, as well as it relates to the opposite version of that, which were, again, in all the Moors, who were here to put the Anunnakis, a.k.a. Nazis, in check. Yet there was a agreement or something that happened way back in the days that led to the fomentation of what we call the rising of what today we would call the Ku Klux Klan. But to deal with that, we got to go all the way back. We got to go back to about 900 A.D. Okay? And around 900 A.D., there was a group of people today we call the Mayas, but in the place that we now today call La Venta, where the original pyramid culture and mound building culture of the Asiatic nation of North Central South America, also known as the Post-Atlantean societies or the Post-Atlantean Lemurian Mu community, that basically resettled after the deluge in what they refer to the land of Canaan. The original land of Canaan is North Central South America. So in doing the knowledge to that, one of the things that the prophet said was that the original inhabitants of Africa sojourned from the land of Canaan and then settled in Africa. So what that means is that the people that they talk about that is from Africa now basically had their antecedents or beginning over here. This is after the so-called flood due to the fact that the migratory patterns of the world transversing back and forth was drastically changed after the Great Deluge, and everything was washed away, and everything was basically still finding its what they call boundary line. So it was said in the Moorish Circle 7 Quran that Cush went up in there, and basically set up his family, and then afterwards his father, Ham, who had been the cursed one, had came and followed. And it wasn't until the people became Moab, that they asked permission from the Pharaoh of Egypt to come back with their Amorite and Hittite brethren and agreed that they would be able to come back to Northwest Africa that we now today know as North Central South America, a.k.a. America. So what we're also saying, brothers and sisters, is that we are in Africa, if you understand Africa as being northwest of Mali. which is why most of the Malian Empire and a lot of the Malian Moors, as well as the Sudanese Moors, were the ones that had a lot more connection with the Moors that was already over here, going all the way back to the El Amana dynasty. But what we must remember is when the Prophet put everything down, he always put it down in a layered meaning. So what this means, or what we're looking at, is the destruction or the beginning of a lot of the things that happen in terms of our spiritual fall, right? And descent into where we are now, where most of our people are now, which is into madness. So as we go back, like I said, historically wise, the term Quetzalcoatl that we refer to as the feathered serpent is the focus, basically, of a lot of the rituals that's going on now, specifically dealing with the one in Sandy Hook as a part 2 ritual, all the way coming back from the Aurora shooting. But a lot of this stuff started way back when they basically brought the harlot of Babylon into the air. Now, what this represents is when your homegirl, Rihanna, when she did her press junket tour, right? It was a plane tour where she got all the press on the boat, on the plane, and they were flying through the air, whatever. So they would going on a 7-day tour to the 7 different places that she was to perform. But the interesting part was that the plane number was 777, right? And they made a point to really get into that. Anybody that saw the DVD that we did call The Babylon Working, or What the F, Modern Moorish Overview of Modern Sex, you would know that we were talking about the Babylon Working, and that the Babylon Working was based upon manifesting the harlot of Babylon through the air. So the fact that the harlot of Babylon was put in an airplane representative of the air, remember Lucifer, or Lucifuge, or Mephistopheles, is the Lord or God of the air. Therefore, Libra, right, which is the air sign, or one of the dominant air signs in Libra, represents his dominion and influence over the aspect of man that he could control, which is, again, is the Librian aspect, which again is the Aryan aspect, which is also the law at this state, because it's basically air, right? When you speak law, when they act like they speak a law, they're using their breath to do that. Therefore, they're sucking in air and blowing air out, right? The term, what you call Nazis, refer to themselves as Aryans, right? An Aryan, then, is someone that is dealing or coming from the quote-unquote line of Aryan races. But what if Aryan was also another false door meaning for those who worship the air? Those who worship the air are the satanic Luciferians, you understand? Now, the god Quetzalcoatl, who is a foreign alien god, get a book called Discovering Man's Past in Mesoamerica. First edition by National Geographic Books publication. And in there they got a section where they start talking about the Toltec Empire. And how they were getting into the Toltecs around the year 900 basically overran the aspect of the Mayan, a.k.a. Moorish dominion. And when they asked who these Toltecs were, they basically were a group of nomadic desert tribes, right? Nomadic desert tribes that came and basically integrated into the Toltec society. And this is what revolt started when you get to Toltecs, the mixed text, this text. They call them texts because they were the ones dealing with the technical aspects of life and technical aspects of mechanics, being able to create things and travel, transverse the stars and all that. So eventually, like I said, Quetzalcoatl was alien to the original Mayas, but was enforced on them by aspects of the Toltecs. So one of the peace agreements was that the Toltecs would agree to, the Mayan would agree to allow the Toltecs to become aspects of their ruling government, but in that, then that they would remake Quetzalcoatl into their own image in the form of a god they refer to as Kukulkan. Kukulkan, right, is the head god that they worship at Chichen Itza. Chichen Itza has 2 main pyramids. these two pyramids, one is the pyramid of the sun, one is the pyramid of the moon. But what's interesting about the pyramid of the moon is that there's an inverted pyramid on the inside of this. Another interesting thing is that the Japanese ran up in there and took out all of the artifacts right before the whole hurricane thing went down. That whole Fukushima nuclear reactor thing went down, which we told everybody and showed and proved it turned out to be true, that it was basic also because there was a pyramid that's under the Japanese islands, or the pyramids under the Japanese islands are starting to vibrate and rise. And also due to the Black Dragon Society trying to get out of any agreements with the United States government in the traditional sense, this was another form of retaliation. So being that the pyramid specs basically match almost identical the inverted pyramid on the inside of this complex in the Pyramid of the Moon, what they decided to do was basically try to see if they could find a way to harness the artifacts and all that themselves. Now, we remember, if anybody be listening to the past couple of shows, I was telling you how the Japanese government from back in the days was trying to infiltrate the Moorish Science Temple, and when that didn't work, they were trying to get into the Nation of Islam, in which they were putting up money. They were sending agreements. They were holding banquets and thing in honor of the Moors and all that. But in that, they were never able to fully integrate. So they started to create, just like other governments were starting to create ways where they could send infiltrators in to start to break it up. So after that, which is why basically maybe formally a lot of the temples were supposedly shut down, like I said, after 1930, or that was alleged to be one of the reasons. So as we get back to Kukulkan, right, this was the god now, in which now, in order to produce him on earth, they had to reform Quetzalcoatl and put him in, or make a version of them in their image. Make a version of them in their image. And so that image became the traditional image of the Mayan or whatever, but there's another image of him where he's dressed in a big white, or what they call a long white dunce cap, right? That kind of looks like the same dunce cap that you see on the people in the KKK. It's also interesting that Kukulkan, again, is KKK again. And this was, again, a god that was almost forced upon these original people. And in order for them to preserve a little peace they still had amongst themselves, they agreed to adopt an aspect of that god and refine it and make it more in their image. Who this sound like? This sound like the war between the North and the South in quote-unquote Kemet, which now they call Africa, in which the North and the South went to war, and the god Amen went to war with the god Ra. But because the South won or whatever, it was behooved the Meniyad dynasty or the Moors of that original pre-dynastic dynasty of Kemet to put the vanquished people's god above the god of the winner. So in that, instead of it being Ra Amen, they decided it would be better to make more peace with the people by making their god still above the bottom. But what that did, again, was create the protocols for what we would eventually deal with later in terms of the unification and the reunification of the original people. Within 60 years of this whole practice now, this whole science of bloodletting and all of that stuff started popping off. Now, when you look in modern society now, what are the evidences of we see that? First of all, let's think about this. Where was the devil, if we are talking about people that they announce they call Caucasians, which really that's not even a designation either. But if we have to get into it, where were these people that they are referring to as this, where were they first, quote-unquote, grafted? And when you read what C.M. Bay wrote in The Clock of Destiny, it says that they were grafted in a place called the Yucatan Peninsula, right? In the place that the original Olmecs or the original Toltecs and mixed text and the original Toltecs started coming up. Now, when you look at a lot of the areas down there, you would see representations of the feathered serpent basically eating children, eating babies, right? Now, remember, the story of Yaqub was basically a black man who decided that he was going to create a people who were unlike his own people and basically create a separate nation, right? this separate nation would basically go on to rule the original nation, right? So in that, then, are we supposed to ignore the fact that the basic proxemic and the time in which this happened all was happening, in a sense, over here? So when we talk about the mass migration of peoples, or we're talking about the creation of races on Earth, you're talking about all of the races basically coming out of the Asiatic race. But in order to produce these different types of people on the planet, you had to create an alternative form of incarnating and reducing the energy that was already here. I.e., you had to get the original people to start to reduce their own selves nationalistically, so that way they would denationalize themselves enough or open themselves up enough for a foreign influence. This foreign influence was manifested as the feathered serpent. So on one hand, the feathered serpent under the original Tumakan Maya represented the activation of the Kundalini Shakti, right? But after 900 AD, it was then flipped to represent the feathered serpent that we see today, which is a symbol for the medical establishment. Ain't that a feathered serpent? You got two serpents with wings and a pin. Now, when you read the story of Yaqub, it says what? That he first gave them stories or lied about the children that they were killing in ritual sacrifice. Who were the nurses? These were the ones who basically had the children and shepherded them to a point, but then made sure that the ones that needed to be killed were killed and sacrificed to the god, who at that time was manifested as Yaqub, because he was the one who was the chief conductor of the experiment. But if we look at Yaqub being a representation of something like again, feathered serpent or a Quetzalcoatl, we're talking about, again, the signs that are literally in our face that we are not paying attention to. Now, the interesting thing is that when you look at what went down, another symbol of Quetzalcoatl, right, or another symbol of Kukulkan, KKK, was the rooster. Isn't it interesting that the original symbol for the Democratic Party was the rooster, and above it, it had the slogan, white power or white pride or some shit, right? Now, when we really start to do the nods to this, and we start to move further up in history, we're looking at an aspect of our global, let's say, denationalization as a result of our agreement or disagreement when it comes to this great experiment that we call humanity. Think about it. When you read the Circle 7 Quran, Noble Ali asked. He asked, what is your race? He said that your race is Asiatic. He didn't say that your race was human. He said as an individual, you are a man and woman, right? Or a man and a widow's son, meaning that we all come from a woman in that sense, who basically begot the child, by way of how the original creator, God Allah, on Lake Head, the universal mother, father, God, brought this energy incarnated into the planet. Therefore, children, like Whitney Houston said, represent the future, because they represent the progeny of God's plan or the universal plan of the Creator for its physical manifestations, for it to learn more about itself. Yet, when certain aspects of our super ancient society started to deal with elements of gene grafting and gene splicing, a.k.a. cloning, and that's another interesting thing. You'll see images of Quetzalcoatl in certain images where he almost is dressed or looks exactly like a clown, or specifically looking like Pavarotti, not Pavarotti, but there's a famous thing with the clown. There's a famous opera with the clown, and that the way that clown is dressed is exactly the way Quetzalcoatl was dressed. Now, the thing about this is, if we look at, again, the Q vibration in Quex and Yaqub, right? And then we also look at the vibration between what was going on in La Venta. When we look at the Nation of Islam used to have this book where they used to have it online where you would, based upon what Elijah Muhammad wrote, peace be upon him, wrote about the Yaqub experiment, they actually had a list of where the breeding sites of where these Yaqub experiments were. In the plus lessons, in the lessons you read, it only talks about Patmos Island. But when you read the high degrees, which again is the CMB stuff and all of that, you start to get further into it, and you start to realize that this so-called experiment was a perpetual thing that led to not only the disunity of the Asiatic race as a people, but to the people who came after the Asiatics, who were then known as humans. The people who were colored in and brought into this reality through a color matrix or color spectrum matrix based upon the bending of the light and the dark, right? And the splitting of the original, quote-unquote, original black gene, right, into the so-called brown gene that then was grafted out further to the yellow, then to the red, then finally into what they perceive as a quote-unquote white, which is really just the clear, right? The melanin that manifests in them is more like a clear film over the skin, but it has no activating principle, meaning that there's no melanin necessary to activate. So one way to preserve oneself in that way, especially when you're in a genetic war, because that's what you are in, believe it or not. The war for denationalization of you as the Asiatic nation was really a fivefold war, in the sense that there was more that they wanted in the outcome. Not only, see, denationalization also leads to possession. It then also leads to alien abduction, possession of, or to be possessed by one's foreign ways or one's foreign habits, to then be abducted and put into an alien form of jurisdiction, because you are not in your original sense, because you are not dealing with what your original nation set its parameters up to be. You are now dealing with how to incorporate this foreign matter into your body. Kind of like it is when somebody gets some sort of transplant. Certain people reject, even if the DNA and all that is a match, some people will reject anything foreign into their body. Thereby, when this invasion came, all of this stuff started happening. And so parts of us wanted to bounce and not be a part of that. These are the sojourns between both sides of the hemisphere, and the fact that we were here in the original land of Canaan and went over and then came back and forth or whatever. But by the time the people became the Moabs, by the time they were known as the Moabite people, which are also the Elamites, the Lydian, the Chaldean, the ancient Sumerian, don't you find it funny that they'll call this place Mesoamerica, but then they'll also call that place, they used to call it Mesopotamia? Because what they're showing you is that the same culture was basically bumping every way back and forth. But there was a predominant culture based upon the hierarchy and how everything was done over here. Because over here is where you're dealing with Atlantis and Atlan and all of that, specifically so-called Lemuria and all of that, which is really where we are from, as that descendants of high scientists and Asiatics that eventually became Moors. So by the time they became Moabites, they had to receive permission from the quote-unquote pharaohs of Egypt. Egypt we know as Kemet, Pharaoh we know as Heru. But how could he ask permission from a pharaoh who didn't live over here to come back over here? That don't make sense. If you want permission, you would ask from the people that was already here, the Moab. So the Moab come back over here with the Amorites and the Hittites, but they had to be put in a certain sequestered area. They had to do that because their genetics had already been mixed based upon their participation as the sons of Ham, the sons of Ham were the ones who were cursed with the leprosy, because these were the ones that were dealing, or what they call from the 12 tribes of Israel. These 12 tribes of Israel are original people, but they were the 12 tribes of original bloodlines, which represented each one of the zodiac signs that was associated with the actual Yaqubian experiment. That's why they are the chosen people by God. Who is the God of Israel? Yaqub, right? What was Yaqub's name? Yaqub, Caucasus, Cushitus, right? So when we say then Caucasian, we can't call a Caucasian a so-called phenotypical people that we call Caucasian today, because Caucasian means Caucus Asian, a group of sequestered or a group of separate Asians or Asiatics that were now going through the process of grafting and regeneration or degeneration to create what they call the human bouquet, which is the experiment of all the different races that started to come out. At the height of the highest empire of this, the only other empire that was rivaling this was the going over there in the Shang dynasty, over there in what they now call Ixig, which is now China. Which is interesting why the Japanese had such a presence over here, especially in places like Hawaii. Because what I'm trying to also say to you, brothers and sisters, is that all of these races, since they have been created and actually been able to be in a certain area, now that we're leaving and coming to the end of the cycle in which the devil reigns, they are all trying to graft themselves back into you. So, when we look at the actual rituals now that's going down, or the origins of what we call in the KKK, what I'm exposing to you now is where the actual egregore that they are feeding is and comes from in its name. This is the grand secret that is only given to the high levels of those people in that so-called society, if you call the Aryan or the so-called Ku Klux Klan or those society. That's the level that they're dealing with. They're always dealing with an aspect as knights, that they are preserving their kingdom. And their kingdom is a genetic one. But that genetic kingdom is built on sand due to the recessive aspect of their genetics. So, a true, quote-unquote, Klansman is one that does not follow anything that the Asiatic or the Moorish nation does. No tattoos, no Muslim names, no hip-hop, no none of that. And they kill and sacrifice and ritualize other races, specifically ours, because we're the ones at war with them, or they're the ones at war with us, specifically to the egregore that they serve. So the high level in that order, beyond the Grand Dragon and all of that, is this Grand Cyclops, right? He's also called the Kligraf, right? So the Grand Cyclops, it's funny, he's the one who is denoted with an X after his name to show his degree. Now, isn't it funny that there's a character named Cyclops on the X-Men who only sees things with a one eye? Don't these people always be covering one eye when they do their thing, right? Then on top of that, he only see red, right? What was the color of the Confederacy? Red, right? Also, nothing with the X-Men, we know that that's also an allegory to the Nation of Islam, because when you get in there, you give up your name, you become an X, meaning that you mutate, right? We also know that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were 33rd degree Masons, and was all about taking the ancient symbolism of the Moors and redistributing it with their face on it, because that was part of the pact, part of the agreement. So, another funny thing is that with this Chichen Itza ritual now that they're allegedly planning for this Friday, they coming down there. Now, the funny thing is that it's approximately 11,666 miles from Chichen Itza to Jerusalem, right? The Chichen Itza ritual is the one that they want to bring in now with the 13 skulls, the crystal skulls that you see in... So, because of that, when we look at the Grand Avenue, now there's a place there by Chichen Itza. Basically, from that point on, from the Toltec culture, is when the culture became a death culture, in which ritualistic sacrifice became a means to do it, and bloodletting, the more blood, the better. This also because the blood was needed for the human experimentation rituals to create what they call, or what we would now today call, the Negro Java Araba super chimpanzee, a.k.a. the Neanderthal, right? Who is then, after the grafting, taken up to one of the other breeding sites in what we now call Europe, and was then put under the jurisdiction of those Moors that was there, representative of that part of the Asiatic nation that was in Europa, under the jurisdiction of the Great Queen, of whom the whole continent was named after. We also know her as the Venus of Willendorf. So when you see those pictures of the big black woman with the big breast, but it's like stone carved or whatever, this was the image that the cave people was carving based upon the overlord or mother that gave them the place to be able to be, Neanderthal caveman or whatever. The Caucasians were the original Moors that were put at the foothills of the so-called Caucasus Mountains to keep them locked up. You know what I'm saying? So when we start getting specific, these people that we're talking about, they don't even really have a designation. They don't even really got a name in the world like that. You know what I mean? Other than the word, let's say, human, meaning the colored man, the one that was filled in, the one that was bleached out, right? So as we move further, right, we look at the fact that in the avenue where they have these grand rituals in Chichen Itza, there's an avenue called first Chicha means at the mouth. You know what I mean? And then, chi is like Chinese, like the chi, the energy, or the energy coming out of the mouth, right? Then I say that the law, when they speaking through the air, and as Lucifer is a god of the air. Then Itza is like water, or or Nitza is like water, or like magic, sorcery. So we're talking about a well now. A mouth with water in it is like a well. There happens to be a giant well at the end of the whole procession of the avenue of Casa de, what they call, I think it's called Casa de Muerte, which is it's like the Avenue of the Dead. And when they have the Day of the Dead down there, which funny thing, that whole ritual with the dead in Mexico that goes down happened to go down 44 days, I believe, before the Sandy thing. Is that number again? So 777, 44, 9/11s, 11s, 26s, 27s, 9s. These are the numerical numbers that they're using to exacerbate the quantum entanglement that they have basically locked a lot of the people up into. And the way to cement that on the people then is through the death of the children, because that's when it weighs and becomes more physical, because then now this is a retardation of the future. That's one less child that's going in that represents the future to be able to change this thing, right? What I believe is that the actual event now, when you're looking at the processions and the ball games that we read about or whatever we see in Apocalypto and stuff, and the people's heads getting cut off and all of that became grand ordained theater ritual to perpetuate the satanic government, or the government that was becoming satanic on earth based upon the outcrop of this Yakub experiment, which started well before 900 AD, right? However, what I'm starting to think is that that's what led to the Great War, the Great Cataclysm, that we read about in the Ramayana text, about the wars in space and all of that, the Great Flood, the Great Sinking of Atlantis. All of this stuff is developed from this actual experiment. Now everybody wants, okay, well, where can we find evidence? Where can we find the bones of Griffith Yakub or evidence of that? You see evidence of it in how it is, the protocol ways in which they run their government. The prophet said, I'm going to leave the European around long enough for you to learn how to run a government. So in watching him run his government, wrong or right, he's showing us that his government is really based in an esoteric manner, a spiritual manner that has nothing to do with our spirit or the Asiatic spirit. The Hadrian, when they did the topography with and penetrated the ground with X-ray radar, they found that there are giant skeletons of giants that lead all the way from the Temple of the Sun, past around the Temple of the Moon, all the way through the Chichen Itza complex, all the way to that grand big bottomless pit. The same bottomless pit that you've seen in the movie, or reminiscent to the bottomless pit that you've seen in the movie Dark Knight Rises. That also happened to have a scene in it that had the word Aurora, and there was a scene where Gordon was looking at the map, and circled on the map as one of the places they need to get was a place called Sandy Hook within Gotham City, right? Gotham City representing the country. Gotham City representing the country, right? So the actual Yakubian experiment, the whole thing between dark-skinned and light-skinned people, this is the aberrant manifestation of this demon that was put in all of us of the Asiatic nation when the whole experiment went awry, when this dude started it, which led to a great cataclysm of war in which we fought to preserve our genetics from everybody else. Because as the base genetics, he needed, the story says he took 30% satisfied and left the 70% dissatisfied, but the 70% that was dissatisfied some of them wind up becoming dissatisfied based upon the world as it started to occur, and all of the disharmony and disunity that started to manifest every time one of these new races was created, because then some Asiatic nation had to be put in charge of them enough to be able to sequester it, and that's when the caste system started on Earth, in which laws and things had to be put down to distribute how you was going to deal with the slaves. Codes like the Codes of Hammurabi, a descendant of the Asiatic nation, but he was, again, a product of the Ham line. He wasn't from the original, the Kush line that went there first when they sojourned from Canaan left over here. So every other nation around the world had to then become part of that, and some of them started to amalgamate with them, whether they liked it or not. And then it's led to more wars, and then it led to the splitting between the female Caucasian woman and the white male. The white male was then put in positions of ultimate servitude or bestial state, where the Caucasian woman was used as a form of currency. So what I'm saying is that this great pit that these people was putting all of this blood in, both from the blood of the Nephilim and the original, who were basically remnants of the original Asiatics from Atlantis, as well as the mixing that they were doing in terms of the animal and stuff DNA that was going on. That's what started to fracture how we was dealing with each other. So some of us left and went to the other side of the world, to the other side of the empire. That was now split in terms of the great ocean, the great Atlantis Ocean, that we navigated like a river. Therefore, this big pit was really a portal, a black hole that they were putting negative energy into to bring about the dualistic nature or the animalistic or demonic nature of man. Anyone knows this? I like the blue one. So therefore, that thing is a big giant, or was a big giant Hadron Collider of that day, that no doubt was connected to these pyramids, like I said, Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, the Pyramid under Japan. And so we began to go further north. The Hadron Collider, coincidentally, over there in France or whatever, they having major problems with that thing. What they did, I don't know if anybody told you, but they turned it on last night. And they're going to leave it on for the next 4 days, coincidentally. But the interesting thing is that it cost $600 billion to build. So you know the fix is in on that. Another thing that's interesting with it, they said time travelers is popping up in there telling them to shut it down if they're playing themselves. The birds, the reason why that they started fighting the birds and waging war against them was that huge flocks of different bird nations was flying up and crashing themselves into aspects of the machine and shutting it down. specifically starlings and red-bellied blackbirds, which coincidentally were most of the birds that they talked about that they was finding millions of birds dead. This was a retaliation. You understand? See, everybody is at war with them, the United States, who is really Yaqub Israel, which is why they fund is the state of Israel, right, which we'll get into in a minute. So all of that's going down. So they basically are trying to turn that on so that way when they go down there and they actually at Chichen Itza, they can do some crazy blood rituals down there and try to activate the one down there too and turn them on both at the same time or activate them both at the same time. So the precursor to that is the ritual sacrifice to do so. So like I said, the initial aspect to pop this off was the Rahana thing. Then from the Rahana thing, we had the Elmo thing to show you that now we're going attacking the children, right? First you find out that Elmo is a black dude. What you'll find is that most of the people in these alien suits that you see be black people because we are alien to them. You see what I'm saying? Or we're the aliens to them because they are the aspects of forgotten or fallen humanity. We are the Asiatic nation that basically helped them incarnate here and gave them an aspect of nationality and the time to rule to see what it would be like to incarnate physically. But what they did was instead of honoring that, they started to foster and make deals with other fifth-dimensional entities that did not want to return back to the all in all, and so used them as physical vessels and hosts for them to manifest their intent through, which is why they had to incarnate through whatever negative people that became part of that Toltec thing I was telling you about, and then use the Quetzalcoatl as an image of the god, because you'll see images of them eating flesh in front. You'll see images of natives eating flesh in front of what looks like a green demon. Right? Now, the interesting thing about that is the image for the town of Newton is the rooster. Again, the same rooster that represents the KKK, the same rooster that represents the Ku Klux Klan, right? Which is the malevolent entity that they have been working with in concert with under different aspects and subdemons for the past 6,200 some odd years. Actually, for the past 25,000, if we get into the fall of Atlantis as well as the actual creation of the so-called human races, which led to the purge of all of the other races that was existing, coinciding with the original man at the time. The dinosaurs, got rid of them. All of the mythical creatures, the centaurs and all of that, got rid of all of them. The ones that didn't retreat into the inner earth. That's why the Bible said that we was given dominion over all of it. Right? So they took the temples that had existed for time immemorial for the righteous purpose and then started switching them, which led the portal open for what would happen later with the arrival of Cortez and them, these now Moriscos, the product in our modern time, the product of the Yacuban experiment up until this point now, these Moriscos amalgamated Moors who were the sons of the white slaves and the black man and black woman who agreed to allow her to be in their harem, which then produced the quote-unquote mulatto or so-called lighter-skinned breed that was then bred with a Caucasian to then produce more of a what they was trying to produce, which is what they perceived as a non-aberrant man. So when we look at all of that, at Tule La Lago in the complex there, with Chichen Itza and all that, is that we look at the fact that all of these people have been following and doing this blood ritual because they've been a part of this same blood or death cult. Right? Therefore, like I said, in the positive, Quetzalcoatl represents the rising of the Kundalini Shakti, which then gives wings to the soul through the pineal organ and then takes you into the outer realms and turns you into the Merkaba. The way we see Pakal Botan and Chumbala on the stele of Palenque in what looks like a rocket ship going into the heaven. But there was two heavens. There was one heaven that was for the high fathers, the high God, and then there was the underworld heaven, which represents the tabernacle or the underworld. Yes, I get the red, the black. So when we look at our time now, where these people who are acting as priests of that's working out all of these rituals, you have to understand this is not a human mind that's producing this. This is a mind that is infesting itself in human bodies to be able to manifest this. So it's already come out that the mother of this guy was part of DARPA, and DARPA is working with a facility called Yerkes, which is like Xerxes, which again is bringing the Iran connection into it. And they have been working a long time on Operation Planet of the Apes, which is really the ability to breed a humanity, which again is proof of the fact that they are still dealing with the Yakubian experiment to perfect and find a way to project themselves into the future post December 21st, 2012. Yeah, those are dope. So again, anything that they do genetically, they use a chimpanzee or something like that to experiment on first. That's because they got to start with the base genetics that represent them. Whenever they're experimenting on us medically, they are extracting something that they are trying to synthesize and put into something else to make that thing better. Or they are working to denationalize our genetics, our subatomic structure, by amalgamating it with corn syrup or high fructose or whatever it is they're trying to do, which will then alter our genetics so that way when the ancient ones return, we are not in the form that they remember. That's why coming back into your free and national name is securing your nationality on a multi-dimensional realm first. That trickles then down into a material aspect, as above, so below. It has to manifest on the spirit realm first, our unity, for our physical unity to manifest from that. That can only come with the redemption of the woman, which is why she is preyed upon and is turned into the Christ. Because remember, in the Da Vinci Code, they told you that the Christ church was put in the care of Jesus' daughter, or Yahushua's daughter. Our genealogy is the genealogy of Isa and is in your Circle 7 Moorish Quran. When you read the gene, it's in there to show you that that is where you come from. So you don't need to go to Ancestry.com or whatever. Whatever your forefathers were, you were and are today. Whatever their forefathers were, they are and were today. So in this ritual of Sandy Hook, they're trying to create a quantum entanglement to take your attention away from the subatomic changes that's going on within you and that will start to fully come online post December 21st. They want to get you to focus on a fear vibe and accentuate that with their satanic ritual to feed this negative aspect of, or this negative pseudo-god, Yakub or Quetzalcoatl, or Satan or Shaitan or whatever you want to call, or the aspect of Set that was banished to the west to block the ascendancy of Heru. So we, as Asiatics, are the descendants of the so-called Almoracan Empire that was under the jurisdiction or comes from the jurisdiction of the Most High, as we were the most ancient of the armed leg, arm-head species to manifest with souls. All the other species that existed with the centaurs and the dwarves and all that, they ain't have souls like that. That's why they fell or had to retreat into the inner earth, and we were given dominion over the surface because we were the ones with the melanated aspect to be able to dominate due to our love of freedom, justice, truth, peace, and equality. So Adam Lanza basically represents Adam Lanza bomb or atom bomb lands. You understand? So this is them understanding what they're trying to do or stop going down in Iran. Right? On the other hand now, the mother, who is a CIA asset and part of DARPA, she basically her cover was the being a teacher or whatever. Ask yourself, why would a suburban housewife just have all these guns? Well, go look at the movie Long Kiss Goodnight with Sam Jackson and Gina Davis. You see the sleeper was activated once she went into the car accident. The car accident was purposeful to get her to be activated based upon a bump on the head, because it was said in the programming that you'll wake up once you get hit on the head or in a car accident. So this is what's called pre-programming. So like I said, we've got 777 Rahana in the air. We've got Elmo touching little boys. No. We got the Aurora Batman shooting, right? We got, which half of it was staged, half of it was fake. All of these are part of this Operation 0 Point, which is them basically trying to block the ascension of the Asiatic race from its ascendancy to the primary factor of the fulcrum, which is the base of the weight and the strength of the pillar that makes it stand. That's us, as the base genetics of everybody. But they want us to believe that we came from everybody else. So when they say that we came from Africa, they are saying that we were slaves who were taken from Africa and for some reason want to go back. But we don't look like and talk like or act like them at all. This is not taking anything from them because they are our brothers and sisters. It's just that the vibration that they were on became more anchored to that landmass and that sphere of influence, but over here we were dealing with a different one. And every so often you would have people who would transverse both and both would benefit. This all was cool up until the 1700s, you see. So, again, Adam Lanza is the atom bomb that lands. So we got to watch out for what they're talking about, listening to them talk about some nuclear Iran or whatever, or something popping off Iran with them actually confirming now they know that there's some sort of nuclear bombs there. Then you've got Sandy Hook, right? So you got Sandy, who is a beach, right? So that's Hook, which is Captain Hook, who is following Peter Pan, who's dressed in green. The color that they're using to commemorate these people is green, right? And green also represents mold. It also represents go, right? So it's a go code, right, on a certain level. So as you break it down further from there, you get his father, Peter Lanza, who's about to testify in the big Labor scandal, but the Labor scandal is connected to the Jack Holmes, Batman, Joker killer, because his father's testifying in the same scandal. So what this looks like is that it's a horror show, which is a code for a trigger activation where you get people to execute a certain agenda without their knowledge of them doing it. You know what I'm saying? So this is basically a code for him to shut up or whatever. And he was an asset as well. She was one, he was one. So that means that him being in GE or GE itself may be an actual CIA front as well from the beginning. You got to look at the notes of incorporation to verify that. But remember, All these people work for the OSS at one point. That's how they keep their money. And the ones that don't or have problems with it spiritually wind up becoming the ones they detract or kill or set up or become bums or homeless or crazy. You see? So, again, Quetzalcoatl is the giant. This is also representative of the Mexican cartels, right? That has basically taken over the United States government, connected to the CIA through this thing called MS-13 and the Mexican Mafia, right? Which is then perpetuating the La Raza race, because these are also people, Mexican quote-unquote people, who were raised up under the kingdoms of New Galicia and the kingdom of New Leon and all of that, all of these Moorish kingdoms that existed in what's now Mexico, as they were the descendants and the mixed descendants of the so-called Spanish that came over, and they agreed to adopt Spanish ways. So they went from being autochthonous Moors to amalgamated or Franciscan Moors. And then the race of so-called Mexicans that was put under them for them to be able to school and bring up into the level of culture the way that they brought the white man, they just exploited them with the white man. This is pre-Boule. So this inverted pyramid represents the down spiral, right, that they are basically in now as they have reached the end. So Sandy Hook, Peter Pan, Captain Hook, you see what I'm saying, is them basically coming in. It was established the town, Newt owned, Newt being a salamander or a piece of elemental magic used when you conduce hoodoo methods into conjuring. We use the eye of Newt, things like that. You know what I'm saying? So these become the elements of society that are used to employ or engender us into a certain mind frame of fear, as well as war in the form of green. Don't the army wear green? So this all, like I said, connects with this grand ritual that they're about to pop off at Chichen Itza, basically to stop them, because everything after December 21st is them going down. You know what I'm saying? Yet they perpetuate themselves through movies as they're going up. You know, but all the movies point to something drastically happening to them specifically, and them having to fight to preserve their way of life in their country, because their country is the United States. Your country is America. Two different places, and you're about to see the direct difference in that. That's why everybody loves the American people and culture, but can't stand the United States government, because they're two different governments. That's shown you on your bill. So, again, the mother was not a teacher at the school. That's what they said at first, right? Sandy Hook has 9 letters, so there's a 9. The father was the father of this shooting, and the father of the Batman shooting was both about to testify in the scandal leading to the whereabouts of the $1.2 trillion that was put into the stimulus that the banks never had to account for, that went into the secret account in terms of them preparing for what they needed to in terms of this ritual I'm talking about, and the preservation of this Hadrian Collider that started with 777, because the day after they set off the Collider, at that tape, on that tape, you'll see we did a meditation where we sent energy to it to block this going on, and they actually turned it off. And the day after, the stock market crashed at 777. And that's fact. That's black history. That really happened. So people will see that tape, will see what I'm talking about at the end. Anyway, it was there. We'll remember. Anyway, this Batman shooting, this is connected to Anubis, right, which is the underworld, which is the lower heaven that they are basically trying to ascend into. They first said they were two shooters, then they said it was 3, right? But they caught the brother, and they found the other guy dead already in the room. But that don't mean that he shot himself. You dig? You've seen the movies, right? 22 children on the same day were stabbed in China. This, again, is to produce the quantum entanglement. Look at the movie Cabin in the Woods. You will see the time ritual sacrifice that was going on where all of this energy was going into a great pit. Really look at the movies, because they're showing you how they run their government. This is what the prophet was saying. As soon as Sagittarius came into view in November, the first day of Sagittarius, a kid ran into a schoolroom and shot his father in the face with a crossbow. Sagittarius is the centaur, again, the ancient life form that existed on the earth, analogous to the original man that had to go once the original one that had to go, because we was the dominant form, and they could no longer exist based upon the high level of concentration and UV and peace that we was bringing to the world. And in the process of that, everything was remade in our image from the great black. So on the same day that the so-called school shootings went down, they were also having a drill. I don't know if they told you that they were having a drill that day for the same event. That's why they was all in the closets already. You see? But remember, being in the closet is also being trapped in the closet. You notice after R. Kelly dropped the trapped in the closet shit, everything went away for him. People stopped talking about the pedophile and everything else because he aired out everything that was going on in the so-called black community of the so-called Boule ritual system. And they had to back up off him. It's exactly 60 miles from New York to Connecticut. There's another 6, which is a 9, right? Then a 9, which is like 10 6s, right? 9 or 10 6s, right? And then there was 27 victims. 9 again, you know. Also, it was the death anniversary of George Washington, a.k.a. George Washington, from 1799. There's 2 other 6s. And 1 and 7 is 8. You know what I mean? 8 plus 1 is 9. So that's another 9, right? On 11/11/11, at approximately 11 a.m., the Secretary of the Government, Francisco Blake Moore, crashed in his airplane. You know what I'm saying? Again, Moore, right? Another interesting thing is that when Cortez and them got there, they renamed the Pyramid of the Moon El Castillo, right? Which is very interesting. Because Castile means the castle, so it was called the castle, right? Because that's what it was going in and learning how a lot of the ancient blood rituals of the death cult that they had just got put onto after the fall of Granada to how to do it. So it's interesting that today there was a shooting in a movie theater where a guy named Jesus Manuel Garcia, age 19, went into the China Garden around 9:30. There it is again, 9, 10, 11. There's that 11 again, which is 2, which is wisdom. And a San Antonio, right, police department chief, which is St. Anthony, which means the deity St. Anthony, is at play here, whose name was Lisa Castellano, right? Lisa Castellano. Now remember, I told you Chichen Itza was called El Castillo or El Castillo. So here we are is Lisa El Castellano, right? Ano or Anu. Lisa Cast Il and Lisa Cast I L A No, or Cast I or in LA No. This is how they talk to each other. You see what I'm saying? By the events that they use. So in this ritual killing of Jesus, right? Killing of Jesus, another probably ritual kid that was triggered through Operation Zero Point or whatever they're calling it, where they're getting all of these children now that are triggered by pop icon or Americana images like Batman or the Joker or whatever to now go and shoot their parents. The idea of this program that she was the asset of, I guess, why they put it in play there to do it for the Defense Department or the DARPA agency was that they were learning how to program children with video games. But what I also think is that being that they were also working with this Human Z thing, that some of these children may be the products of this Human Z experiment that have now gotten to maturity, and they are now trying to prime them or activate them to see how that's going to work in the new play to destroy our genetics again or kill as many of us as possible to get everybody to give up their guns so that way they can come in and do it as they want to do. But what they don't know or what they fail to forget is no matter how much money you giving these homebred, redneck, white boy crackers, they great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfathers was the slaves of dark, barbarous Moors who we freed them from those barbarous Moors in, for some ways, buying them out, buying their freedom and teaching them culture and letting them run into the plains, and eventually they become known as Plains Indians. These are all Caucasian people, these Mexican people, these Native, so-called Native American people, these Casino Indians. These are all of the white people who adopted so-called Indian culture, which was copyrighted and jurisdictionalized by the United States government as them being wars of the state, being that they lost the war for their own independence after they stopped backing us after the Civil War started in 1854 amongst the original Cherokee nation of the Algonquin or Moorish or Al-Moroccan Confederacy of the Asiatic nation of North and Central South America. And the unity was not put back into order until February 20th, 1928 by nobody else but Noble Drew Ali. Nobody. There were people that helped him get there. Remember, he was divinely prepared, which means all the great minds and ascended masters of that age had to give to what he was, because he symbolized the resurrection of the original Asiatic Al-Moroccan Empire. So this shooting that went down, like I said, was a ritual in order for them to be able to celebrate not only the death anniversary of George Washington, from 1799 to 2012, right? The beginning of the empire and now the end. See? In which they try to flip on both these Hadrian Collides, the ancient one at Chichen Itza, El Castillo, the castle, which was connected to the El Cid, which were the quote-unquote Moor killers, which were the so-called Moorish mercenaries, the original Moors, who were descended from the ancient Toltecian Moors, who bonded and taught the ways of torture and all of that, and bonded also with the Hashemite Moors that turned against the old empire, and then started to merge with the amalgamated Franciscan Moors in secret, who paid them to then assassinate the nobility Moors and all of that. So don't believe that the Medici family wasn't getting money at the same time so-called His Britannic Majesty was, because when he was getting that money, he had to give it to Spain, and then Spain had to give it to so-called France. This was the 10 years of secret diplomacy that existed between the three-headed beast. So in that, this, again, ritual that's set up was then put in the fact that in the ancient times, after the fall of Montezuma and all of that, and the universal capital of North Central South America was broken, then the individual Algonquin Empire or as well as the Dugdamaldia Empire were basically the two greater empires up to the north. And then out west you had like the Anasazi, and these type of people who then gave birth to the Hopi and then gave birth to, eventually the people that became that now. But essentially, all of these cultures wind up getting sucked into the same thing, and then some of them started bouncing and going to the other side of the world and so forth and so on. Yet the breeding programs, if you look at them, as was listed by Elijah Muhammad, in comparison to what they call the transatlantic slave trade, were the same thing, which means that from time immemorial, from the Yacubian times all to now, these places, these metropolitan areas were always used as Yaqubian breeding sites to produce the so-called Yaqub Israel out of the so-called Cushitus Asiatics, who were part of the so-called chosen tribe, chosen by Yaqub to help produce this new thing that would be known as the human race, out of the original Asiatic global nation that existed in all of the empires of what we call the ancient world. That's why they all got remnants of each other's culture in them, because they were all remnants of the original culture that, after the flood, had its original center part here, amongst people that look like us today. That's why they don't never want to put you in a movie where you like in Prince of Persia. If they really made it what Persia looked like back then, it would be all black people, and they don't want you to see no movie like that. But now they have to do it. That's why they popping it off with this Django thing, to show you who was really manipulating and creating the division between the original people, and led to the great amnesia that we are now coming out of now. So to block us from that, they create these horrific rituals, but what they're also declaring is war on their own people and children first. That's why he'll cry for them, but he won't cry for us, because he don't got no sympathy for us, no matter how many niggas get killed, because he is dealing in a law capacity. Therefore, he is only dealing with real people, or people who are represented by a nation. And the nation honors the mother and father of that. So these Moors are telling you to rescind and turn away from what was already given to you by your mother and father, or are basically outsourcing your nationality and creating a false nationality for you to fall victim to. Without them, may not even realize it. So the ancient relationship between Ku Klux Klan and the KKK is then remanifested in all of the natural products and things that exist in physical matter, because it's a quantum entanglement that has to represent itself in some physical fashion. So the same way you'll have Ku Klux Klan and KKK, you'll have Kim, Chloe, and Courtney. See what I'm saying? KKK. Because this is all ways that they glorify their culture. Because the KKK, again, is an aspect of, quote-unquote, Europeans, right, meaning that they were sons of Europe, right, who spoke the language that their slave forefathers spoke under their lords and barons and masters, which were our cousins and brothers in them. But we weren't brutal with the slave like that. So that's why we wind up falling victim, because essentially we were the part of always needed to represent the part of the nation that was never down with that shit. And by the time we unified and rallied behind that, by the time of the Battle of Lake Erie, that's when it fell. So rituals like what happened with the school, with Newt's own, is a representation of the new town that they want to build, in which they are now actively using that, because they degenerated, quote-unquote, the white male and woman to the point where they've been niggerized so much under George Bush that they are even seen inferior in their eyes to be, quote-unquote, white or Aryan or truly Luciferian. That's why only certain families are let into the high aspects of that stuff, into the order of the trapezoid and all of that. So all the artifacts and all of that stuff that's taken from them, they have now manifested a point in which they seek to ally their jump point into the other black hole and create a literal representation of the three-headed God. The black hole in France, which is now the Hadrian Collider, the artificial one, then the original one in Chichen Itza, which is now connected to the blood ritual sacrifice that was already done in Connecticut, right? Which is then anchored now to this black hole that is now linked up with the sun, that's now linked up with the moon, that's now linked up with the earth. So they're seeking to suck this energy into their reality and project themselves and us back into some situation. That's why on BET this week they're trying to show you roots. Showing you roots. You know what I'm saying? At the same time, Django coming out, they're showing you roots. So they're showing you what can happen or what was also happening during roots, but it took them almost 25 to 35 years to do that. Because remember, they 85. 8 and 5 is 13. Therefore, 2013 is the year that the original man makes original contact with the ancient one within him, and the one that is now manifesting and coming back through this great black hole that has been predicted since time immemorial. Therefore, the face in the middle of the wheel that you see in the great mandala that they call the great calendar of the quote-unquote Maya, which is the Tumwatan or Olmec. And then, exactly. That's right. Because all of that has become the jump point. This is what they want to use to project themselves and us, like I said, into this alternate place, into being Newt's own formally in the new world. That they're already done with it. So the ritual aspect of what happened to them has now created this atom bomb that they now seek to infect on everybody else. So this is going to lead to an escalation in the Syrian situation, which will then lead to an escalation into... I want him to come in the room. Hey, what's up, team? So they've become a level of reality where they don't have a position to do so. They don't have a way for them to be able to actively create a space where they can exist without us. So the goal is to create a world where being us is the only option. Believe it or not. So the way to do that is to get you to denationalize yourself. And so the adoption of false realities is that. See, nobody likes to be told that there's really only one way to do it at this point. But in not accepting what can be or what is, we put ourselves in a position to fall victim to the same old, same old. And that's essentially what's happening. Like, people are really buying into this. You know what I mean? And what is really sad is that these children may not even really be dead. These may be children that they bring out and put out to you later as other serial killers and other mass murderers to get you to believe that you shouldn't have a gun to protect yourself from them, or that in some way you're responsible for them because you didn't vote for them to say that they shouldn't have guns. When these same guns are shooting and killing black people, Asiatic people every day, and this so-called man who cries for these alleged or fictitious victims, I'm not even saying that they didn't happen. But what I'm saying is that they lie so much that it may not have. So I can only save, really, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I can really only save my tears for those people I know that's physically out here, that I'm in their life, to know that that's happening. Everybody else is just hearsay. It's what human connection do you make? Because that human connection, especially when you're dealing with a person who believes that they're human, will then lead to an Asiatic one, which then leads to a unification and a renationalization of our perspective. I'm not from a nation that says that it's okay to have a man insert his member into another man's anus or mouth. I'm not from that nation. I'm not from the nation where a man can rape a woman, you know what I mean, and then expect her to then raise the baby and expect that baby not to be in some way scarred by that actual situation. I'm not from that nation. You know what I'm saying? That's not any nation I'm a part of. And you have, again, leaders, grand chiefs, things like that, as well as so-called, military, that are literally pimps that are running pimp organizations, literally, through the temple. So, I got to go by what the man said, and what the man said was that watch for those who speak against the temples, right? But the temples, what temple was he talking about? You know what I'm saying? Is it a temple if the head of that organization is going into other meetings where he is subordinate to another man or another jurisdiction? No, it's not. That's a law. That is a Masonic temple. You dig? Lodge is an American word. They pattern their temples after our lodges, and now we fight to be in their temples and act like our lodges is not proper. They're only not proper because we haven't utilized the things that the man left for us to do. However, we look at it like, oh, I'm not into that Moorish shit or whatever. Yeah, but Noble Ali was cool with Marcus Garvey and everybody else. Marcus Garvey was building the army. That's why the British the United States couldn't even deal with him. And because he was from here. He was solid. They had to deal with the British and get the British Moors to figure out how to do it. And so that's where the whole beef with him and Selassie thing came in. But in that, they was able to see who they could deal with. So once W.E. Du Bois came out, and we Ali could be like, okay, cool, you coming out against my man. Even though you don't know that's my man, I'm not messing with you. You dig? And so they created the fake Shriners and all of that to mimic the original true shrine that was created by him and Dr. Solomon and El Amir. But they don't want to get into that because that's real dealing with the aspect of the world organization that the American organization basically came out of. Yet we don't understand how these things work intricately. Therefore, we don't understand our government. Therefore, this one is not going to respect us as a nation or a people. He's going to respect us based upon the levels that the white man was led to respect. But remember, the Dred Scott, people don't know that the whole Dred Scott thing was undone by a Moor. But to find out what or who that Moor was, they didn't have no way of dealing with it. You know what I'm saying?
Back to the IMF, this thing got shut down like 2 months after. Point is that I'm thankful that I have my little apartment.
They didn't have no way to do it.
We're near everything.
Can you go outside? So all of this is tied in together with them finding a way out. Come on, just leave it closed, man. Mommy's going to come back in. Come on. Just wait. So, yeah, he's exercising his sovereignty. So, all of this is coming down in how they have dismembered Osiris. So all of this, again, is even based on this ritual of this resurrection, of our fall and resurrection. When you look at Osiris, when you look at Hiram, when you look at all of the ways that they bring about this ritual, it's always about us rising out of what was put in our way. You see what I'm saying? This is the time where we're supposed to be able to bring about our will and manifest it without the obstacle. So then why are all the obstacles placed in your way? How can we even talk about the devil and not talk about Yaqub? Because that's part of our oral history. You understand what I'm saying? And we were nationalized or ordained or appointed to be nationalized by our authority, not by somebody else, not by a chief, not by a union, but by you. And those that help you do it cannot charge you for nationality. They can only charge you, really, for the time that it takes to divinely prepare you to get there. Don't get it twisted. Noble Ali wasn't given nothing. he was put in situations where he had to find ways to repay. But the way that he did that was by honoring his word, that when he got into the position, he would go back and hit everybody off, and he did. By declaring and nationalizing. And the power that exists in doing that, and the power to do that, we're the only people who do that. Everybody else can only naturalize, no matter where they come from. So the same culture that these black men and these black women running away from and upset at, that, oh, you know, that says that, you know, I ain't wearing that, that's the tool of the oppressor and all of that. Like, these are the same people that's wearing, like jeans and sneakers, you know what I'm saying, and belts and all of that. And again, I wear all of that. But that's why I'm not on some, like, you know what I'm saying, like, I'm not still in certain aspects having to support this oppressor. I still have to live. I still have to use instruments that are not of my nature to do so. Yes, he is. Until we ordain, or enough of us nationalize the right way, that we can then be the voice that we're supposed to be. And now is the right time. But because everybody want to be a grand sheik, or this or that, you see what I'm saying? The man came and just said that it's the sheiks. So if you say you a grand sheik, or, again, I'm not trying to diss nobody either, but I'm just keeping it real. You adding on something that wasn't there in the beginning. And if we are founded something from the beginning that was made perfect, how can we then add on to that? We can only add on to that by coming in the name of that. And being in the name of that, they have tried to make you believe it's evil. Don't they tell you that the Lord of the Canaanites, or the God of the Canaanite, was the evil god Baal that was just like Moloch, and he deserved a sacrifice? No, Moloch was the Moabite god. Baal was the Canaanite god. But Moloch represents the Moors, right? And the sons of Lamech, which again were part of that Jacobian line or experiment that led to the creation of what led to the Holy Roman Empire and the Hanseatic Leagues and all, and ancient Rome. Because remember, there was the Roman state, there was the Roman Republic, and there was the Roman Empire. There are three different things that resided in three different places. Just like Carthage. Part of Carthage was in America. Part of Carthage was in North Africa. Part of Carthage was in America, period. I think there's a Carthage, North Carolina. So these geographical locations and the names of these things are ordained and put there as universal and geographical markers for the return of this ancient understanding that was laid out in the formation of the land masses and the pictographical, geographical, and industrial structures that were put in place for these gods and universal mind states to remember. So the pyramids and all of that stuff, the mounds and all of that stuff, is just the physical, pictorial, third-dimensional representations of what our ancestors left in the physical world for us to navigate through once we attain consciousness again. Remember, the brain of these giants that they call the Nephilim and these people like that, that litter the avenue of the dead at Chichen Itza, represent the closing of that age, that these great ones were put into this position. That's why the giant statues have them with the breastplates that would look like guns and shit on the side of them. You did? Because this was a war of genetics. And we were the generalissimos in the whole thing, because we were the ones that kept the oral history and the unified genetical structure that led to the creation of it all. That's why they hate you but want to breathe back into you. That's why the KKK is forsworn by the Kaisers, who were the black nobility that bleached out, that led to rule the Holy Roman Empire, that collapsed with the assassination of the Archduke Ferdinand, that they used to go in and destroy all the remnants of the white and black nobility, to replace it with the clones, again, of Yakub Quetzalcoatl in the form of this new feathered serpent that was now given the pin. The pin represents the pin that was put in the baby's head, the infanticide that they deal with, the killing of the child. The wings represent the lie or the ritual of the justification of the murder. And then the DNA or the snakes represent the unification of the DNA and the RNA. This is what the man wrote in Theology of Time years ago. If it wasn't for the Moorish Science Temple, Farrakhan would be in jail right now. But he ain't going to tell his people that. And they ain't going to listen to nobody who tells them that, because they are under the jurisdiction of that ideology. That has now come to a point where it must, like everything else, bear witness to what is about to present itself within all of us. So this 3 days of darkness that they talk about coming can be seen as different things. It could be a literal 3 days of darkness, but it could also be a literal 3 days where you lose consciousness. It could be the 3 months in between now and March, the true beginning of New Year. Yeah. It could be anything that we would ever say it is, because this is the time when we have the ability to reach back in our genetics and pull out the truth of who and what we are. Don't matter if there was a white man in your bloodline. That means that you were brought into the experiment whether you liked it or not, like everybody else was. That's why they say everybody was born a slave, or nobody was born innocent, because everybody got an aspect of the tainted genetics in them. Professor X had the ability, when he put on Cerebro, to kill the mutants or the humans. The mutants had the red light, the humans had the white light. You know what I'm saying? Magneto was for the humans, because Magneto was right. There's actually a band called Magneto Was Right, which is funny, but it's true. Because they patterned Magneto after Malcolm X. But see, it's like both ways. Great men sometimes make great mistakes, like we all do. And you can't come back as an L, but then still keep the secret to the Prince Hall. Like, it don't work like that. Like, they don't really know what they in, just like the people in the temple don't really know. There's beautiful people in every temple, in every church, in every mosque, synagogue in the world. But it's not them. They are following what these devils are telling them to do, and these devils is in league with the devil. But now they done out-devil the devil, because the devil is not even calling for these sacrifices. This is shit that they just got to do or been doing based upon them trying to reincarnate this entity that has been split up to all of the different entities into the different orders and is worked into the sigils that represent the different levels of their society. That's why prison bars are iron and not steel. Because if they were steel, more people break out. Steel don't break the spirit. Iron break the spirit. That's why one thing they say about Yakub is that he did not build prison houses for his people. That's why his society worked. There was no prison. But it was like that in our society. But in his society, it was based on a draconian system where if you did anything, they just kill you and reprocess your organs and experiment on you and all that other shit or whatever. And those Moors that didn't want to deal with that, bounced. And so the culture had to be steered into a way that celebrated death. And then Rome was patterned after this. And then that system of Rome was then carried into the other civilizations to see who within the civilization would rise to the top. So in Rome, it eventually became the Caesars. See what I'm saying? In the Maya, it eventually became the Toltec. See what I'm saying? In America, it eventually became the United States, but it was always done through trickery and amalgamation and genetic warfare and infanticide. this was not the ways of our nation. We as an Asiatic race, we didn't deal with that because we are the ones that carried the history from time immemorial. We are the American Indian. We are the Moorish American. We are the Al-Moroccan or American or Tonkinist American. We are the ones that was here first. And nobody can show and prove me different. No, you could show me DNA, it don't matter. In the trust that was given to me by this man, in this document right here, it say this. And in your world, you only believe shit that comes from paper. So if that's the case, then this is the paper that you're going to follow everything from when dealing with me. And this is this circumscribed Quran. And everything that I got to do to deal with you is in it. So whether I'm a Christian, whether I'm a this or that, if I know what my nationality and my race and my original God is, then if I'm dealing with Christianity as a Moor, then I'm dealing with it as a political situation and not a religious ideology. That was the difference in how Moors could deal with shit and how these people who were caught up in the situation could deal, because we could always bounce. You dig what I'm saying? Or we could always go with somebody that was there that had money because they always respected us because they would learn something from us. So with this Libra scandal, this thing is about to pop right after December 22nd. All for Christmas. So Django Unchained is the representation of the unification of this black hole. So on this day that this happens, like I said, they want to deny that by creating this new quantum entanglement on a geophysical level that then will incarnate more entities to take control of the darkness period of this realignment of everything else, the recalibration. Because there's a window, like I said, between this period where everything is happening. You see? Between December 21st and March 22nd. So that's a whole wonder period, you see, where members of the higher heavens and members of the lower heavens are able to come in and actively affect change in the world. Therefore, those who come in the Bay and the L are represented by the original intent of the Asiatic nation that, again, is genetically connected all the way back to the beginning of creation as those who were first incarnated with souls on behalf of the original creator. And all of the religions and the pseudo-races and things that were created after us became what may be known as humanity. That's why the prophet said we of the Asiatic race of the Al-Moroccan descendants of the Al-Moroccan Empire of North Central and South Africa of Mexico are here to uplift fallen humanity, meaning that we standing up. We already all right. You know what I'm saying? He didn't say we went down to uplift fallen humanity. It said that we uplifted them. We helped them up. What did Marcus Garvey say? He said, up, you mighty race. Look at this. That's what I'm trying to say. All these dudes are working together, but it's up until now. This is what it takes to the end of what they say, the end of the world, for us to realize that all of this was the same stuff. So no matter how many white children they kill, they can kill 1,000 of them on TV. These white people is not giving up their guns. I don't give a damn what you say. What you try to do, they are not having it. They will storm the Capitol because they are been knighted from Hugh de Payon, who knighted Jacques de Molay, who represented the slave class of the Templar system, who was burned at the stake. You get what I'm saying? To make sure that they would have an empire for themselves. Hugh de Payon was the one who organized the first Templars. He's the one who went in there and basically challenged Salah ad-Din, blessed and dead. And in the process of that, he was then backed by the Holy Roman Empire that was a part of the original Catholic Church that existed in Geneva and Freising, Bavaria, Germany, as before it was the so-called where it is now in Italy. And they conspired to put these Franciscan history, this new pseudo-Moorish history, Morisco history, into play against the original ties that was set up by original tenants of the original descendants of Jerusalem. That place did not become Jerusalem until after the Crusades, really until the establishment of the Israeli state, really They used to call it Palestine when the Arabs had it. But when you go back to the ancient point, it was set up by the remnants and descendants of Canaan. So that means you got access to that land by decree. In their religion, it says that place they call Jerusalem was set up by the descendants of the original Canaanites. Didn't it say the Hebrews went into Canaan and took it over after Joshua broke the walls down? The walls they talk about is the woman, the original woman of the nation that the Hebrews was able to come into and then break down by using the Qliphoth, which is the tree of death, on the other side. That they was dealing with this old Chichen Itza science that they was inbred with based upon them being descendants of this Yakubian experiment that they have now regenerated and manifested in this so-called green-eyed demon, this Frankenstorm, that brings the sand, which is glass, right, that looks clear, but if it's shattered, it will kill you, right, to put the hooks in newts on children. That is now manifested in the color that they represented it by, which is green, which represents the green fez that was hijacked by the Holy Roman Emperors and brought back to Bavaria, Germany, and had little jewels and stuff put on it and tacked down. That's why when you look at Trayvon Martin's father, he got this green fez on with a tacked down with writing on the front. That's why the prophet came and said, I'm here to tell you to take the sword off, because he was the descendant of the one, or was the one with Suleiman and them again, that set up the true shrine, which was supposed to be the vehicle to bring Negroes and 14th Amendment citizens out of bondage, out of Prince Haldom, back into Moorish science. So you were supposed to go through the Marcus Garvey system, and then through the Marcus Garvey system, you would then learn the Nation of Islam system, and then through the Nation of Islam system, you would then get into the Shriner system, and then through the Shriner system, you would get back into the Moorish system, and from the Moorish system, you would then become fully wide Asiatic, part of the original Asiatic black nation, a.k.a. the Almoroccan Empire. But you know what I'm saying? But, you know, these people then flip it, like I said, and then create a false version of that. All the white boys that was supposed to toe the line, and they still doing it, though, through the KKK thing. That's why the KKK thing was sanctioned and okayed by the Boule. You'll see in Django that it's not really the white man Candy that's doing it. It's Uncle Remus, Uncle Ruckus, the nigga behind him, played like Sam Jackson. That's the one that taught him how to be this on nigga. Because these people that you see as the early pioneers, Buffalo Bill and all these Davy Crockett and these people, these were white people who learned the ways of the Moors and then were paid and employed by black men under the face of white men to go in and kill and get rid of the original people there. And these white men made their own agreements and then eventually came to the original men and said, look, you either going to be down with us in this form of the agreement, or we're going to tell these native niggas that you are the real niggas behind the shit. So by the time the original American Indians or the original Moors found out what was going on, we was already in the agreement. That's why we went through so many stages before we sanctioned the so-called Constitution. We went through the Articles of Association. We went through the Articles of Confederation. We went through the so-called Declaration of Independence, as well as a declaration and the independence of the colonies. We provided for them. And so those original Knights of Pythias, again, these are original knights that go all the way back to the Hugh de Payon that's practicing this old worship of ritualistic sacrifice that happen to be parts of the Asiatic nation that are still preserving this thing in secret amongst themselves. And then there's white boys that's watching them, and they teaching this form of sacrilege too, and then these white boys pass it on and start to breed their children that way. This was all, again, sanctioned by aspects of the Hashemite Empire due to the fact that they were the so-called assassins that you playing in the game Assassin's Creed, killing all of the Native Americans as well as the British that's fighting over here, whatever. These were the Moors that was over here getting rid of all of the people. These are the Hessians and the Huguenots of the Hanseatic League, going back to the Habsburgs, who was playing both sides of the shit. These are the descendants of the people they call the Rothschilds and the so-called royal families people now, bleached out. So now that this chick is having a dual Antichrist, they are now trying to create the great blood ritual to somehow amplify the black hole energy into her womb by bringing her to one of those 2 points. What I think they're going to do is try to put her in the thing and materialize the child or materialize it out of the so-called smashing of the atom. That's why Adam lands up, right? It's really Adam that they're trying to smash or trying to create, try to extend their life period in this genetic battle or war that they've been fighting for the past 6,000 plus years, from a 25,000-year period that we started fighting amongst ourselves. From an earlier 25,000-year period where the beginning of this union within us genetically began, which again led to the great fall and the great fight, or the flood of what became the deluge of Atlantis. So them trying to unite these 13 skulls down there and all of that, they think it's going to work for them, but it's not, because they're still doing it. They don't have none of, it's not going to work without one of us there. So what they have to do physically, all you got to do on December 21st is get an image of Chichen Itza. Get an image of that and project love and light and power and great amplification. Get another image of a black hole, or go outside and look at the sky and project that upward and outward. Love and light and honor and what you perceive the new world and the empire to really be. Because once the empire exists in you, where you could close your eyes and literally imagine yourself in it, where you walking around in your robes and, you know what I mean, smiling at everybody, eating brief fruit, seeing the planets and all of that, if you can literally see that when you close your eyes, then that's the place that you're going to go. That's the place that exists. Therefore, everything that you do physically from that point on is to put you in line with that. And based upon the karmic levels being sanctified and the founder coming on February 20th, 1928, and dealing with the convention of the removal of the aliens from the American states, he gave them the end of the lease, which is December 21st, 2012, at 12 o'clock. That's why they invaded Cuba. That's why they went and called it the Bay of Pigs, because they were trying to find the Grand Bay left the original document the same way they went in trying to find document of African Lodge 459 with the whole Prince Hall, which started the whole Prince Hall crap and the G7 Lodge over here. Just because you have immaculate ritual don't mean that it has substance. Busyness do not equate accomplishment. Therefore, when they did all of this, they was trying to sanctify and create a way for autochthonous Moors, Moorish Americans, to adopt a fictitious or foreign Moorish nationality for them to be able to adopt that, so we would no longer deal with the original Kituwa, Nighthawk, or Black Hawk society that went all the way back to time immemorial, of which we were the ones that created the stuff that they based what they created after. We didn't quarry rock when we built it. We saw the rock and built it and hewed it right there. We didn't have to move nothing. And when we did, we wasn't using ropes and pulleys, just like they wasn't doing over there. But we didn't move things. We used the earth itself to represent what we were striving to build and be. Over there, our cousins and them took pieces of the earth and sculpted it in how they needed to be. But all things, when we was dealing over here, was done on a fifth dimensional to the seventh or ninth dimension first and then brought down. So, systematically, the destruction of these children and things that have happened now to block what's going on. So, like I said, get the image, get the understanding of where these places are. If anybody wants to get on the class this Wednesday, holler at me at houseofel@hotmail.com. We'll expose more of this. And again, once you understand what's really going on, you start to see the correlation in all things. And what originally attracted me to modern science was that it enabled me to see me in everything that was out there. So I could see it in a Rasta, I could see it in a BPG, I could see it in a Chemite, I could see it in a Wapian, I can see it in a Christian. I can see it in anybody that's striving to have some sort of spirituality with their consciousness. So if there ain't no spirituality in the consciousness you're dealing with, then you're wasting your time. And they're trying to bind you up in another quantum entanglement that's going to create a tetrahedral redundancy that's going to put you in a trick bag once we move past December 21st and the M gene becomes active. I wrote about aspects of this in my book. A lot of the things that I wrote in my book, I'm not trying to be funny, but a lot of it has started coming true, and it's bugging me out. The whole Pope thing, not knowing when the real end of the world and all that stuff was, all that stuff is in my book, and plus a lot more. So if you want to check that out, check out www.darkscope418.com. Also, if you want to holler at me again about the class on Wednesday night, which will be the last class for 2012, post December 21st, 2012, holler at me at houseofel@hotmail.com. As well as anybody want to give any donations for a lot of the knowledge and stuff we dropping, you can do so to PayPal at dukeoftears@gmail.com. That's DUKEOFTIERS@gmail.com. As well as www.cookingmoreWithLess.com, as well as www.sagasod.com. Also, again, in all the things we building on, we talk about the ancient origins of things. So by no way do I endorse any violence against any nation per se. And do I endorse the acts or the clan, like we should accept anything like that. And exposing how these people are doing their shit, what I'm striving to do is show you how they never had anything else but to base themselves on you. Even their hatred is coming from an aspect of them that was then put on us and adopted on ourselves, that we then started to look at ourselves through their eyes instead of through ours. So my reason for this, again, is to bring truth to the matter so that way we can get to the bottom of it and not really get so caught up in who was right and who was wrong, but to expose the fact that there was a great injustice done, and specifically these were the people involved. So whatever comes from that is what it is. But it ain't to slander or put out anybody's specific ideology or whatever. But in the end, there's really only one way. And keep it real with you. Few humans don't like to hear that. Asiatics still hear something else. So again, holler at me at houseofel@hotmail.com. Thank you for tuning in to Super Heru Radio. Bless all of the children that have been taken from their original mothers and fathers by parts of their mothers and fathers, as well as family members or strangers. May all of the children killed in satanic rituals to Quetzalcoatl or Chichen Itza or Yakub or anything else these people are doing, may they all be avenged. And after December 21st, 2012, we really get into the meat of who and what we really are. And may all the ancestors that return see us for what our intent is in this world, and that we may all see who and what we really want to be. In the name of the original Creator, and in the name of the original Mother, Father, Mother, God, that's so sublime that we can't even begin to use an earthly name to define, that is exactly where and what is starting to manifest within all of us. Therefore, if we open our hearts and our minds to the love of who and what we really are, we'll really be able to do it. And it don't give a damn what they say, it's what we say. You are nationalized by your authority. They are naturalized by your authority in the end. That's why this nigga sheds no tears for Trayvon and any of the other Sean Bells or any of the little girls from the Asiatic nation that have been maimed and murdered by this beast. Yet, again, the devil is the devil regardless. God is God regardless. And once we get past the details in the end, it's about what we choose and what we are going to be. So again, as this is the last Super Heru for that 2012, we just want to say peace in terms of post-December 21st. And that the next show we do be even more in-depth and inshallah more enlightening. So with that, we say peace.